Do you remember those dangerous household items, the ones we trusted every day without knowing the risk? In the 1970s, our homes were filled with bright colors, clever gadgets, and hidden hazards we never questioned. Looking back now, how did danger ever feel so ordinary? In the 1970s, a bright coat of paint was seen as the quickest way to freshen up a home. The walls glistened with color, the nursery looked cheerful, and even wooden toys were coated in glossy perfection. What no one realized was that beauty came with a cost, a quiet, invisible danger hiding in plain sight. Lead-based paint was everywhere, from cribs to kitchen walls, sold as durable and easy to clean. Families trusted it, unaware that each chip and flake released toxic dust that lingered in the air and settled on everything. Children, drawn to the bright colors, often ingested it without anyone knowing. By the time doctors began connecting developmental problems to lead exposure, millions of homes were already covered in the stuff. It took decades for regulations to catch up, and even then, the damage was done. This was the kind of danger that did not explode or burn, it simply stayed, poisoning quietly. Looking back now, it is haunting how something so ordinary became one of the most dangerous household hazards of its time. In the era of modern living, asbestos was marketed as a miracle material. It was heat-resistant, fireproof, and affordable, everything a builder could want. Homeowners proudly installed asbestos ceiling tiles, believing they were upgrading to a safer, more sophisticated home. No one questioned what was in the panels that covered their heads. When the tiles aged, cracked, or were cut during renovations, microscopic fibers filled the air, unseen but deadly. Families breathed it in for years, never suspecting the quiet danger in every breath. It was only later that doctors linked those fibers to lung cancer and mesothelioma, a cruel legacy of convenience. The saddest part is how long it took for the truth to surface. People trusted the advertisements, the packaging, and the promise of safety. Those ceilings were meant to insulate, but they ended up haunting countless lives. The shiny, modern touch of the 1970s turned out to be one of the deadliest materials ever brought into American homes. In the mid-1970s, energy efficiency was the new American dream. People wanted homes that stayed warm in winter and cool in summer without wasting money. That dream led to formaldehyde foam insulation, hailed as a cheap, cutting-edge solution. Contractors sprayed it into walls like miracle foam, sealing gaps in minutes. At first, homeowners were thrilled. Their houses felt warmer, the bills were smaller, and the air smelled faintly of newness. Then came the headaches, burning eyes, and nausea. The culprit? Toxic formaldehyde gas leaking into every room. What started as progress turned into panic. Families opened windows in the dead of winter, desperate for clean air while government agencies scrambled to investigate. The foam was eventually banned, but its smell lingered in memory, a sharp reminder of how easily safety could be sold as innovation. The insulation meant to protect families instead turned their homes into slow, suffocating traps. Few inventions felt more modern than non-stick cookware. Teflon promised freedom from scrubbing, stuck eggs, and greasy messes. Housewives and young couples alike embraced it as a symbol of convenience and progress. It was advertised as the perfect marriage of science and home life, sleek, spotless, and futuristic. The shine of those silver pans reflected an entire generation's faith in technology. But inside that slick surface lurked a chemical secret that no one could pronounce, much less understand. But what they did not know was that overheating a Teflon pan, something as simple as forgetting it on the stove, could release invisible toxic fumes. Birds dropped from their perches, families complained of dizziness and coughing. Manufacturers brushed it off, calling it harmless. Yet behind closed doors, scientists knew those fumes came from chemicals that could cause flu-like symptoms in humans and death in pets. The same coating that made cooking easier also made breathing more dangerous. Teflon was progress, but at a price no one could see. Looking back, it is unsettling how something designed to make life cleaner ended up polluting the very air of the American kitchen. Polyester was the fabric of the future, shiny, smooth, and effortlessly modern. In the 1970s, it covered everything from clothing to home decor. When polyester curtains hit the market, homeowners fell in love. They looked elegant, never needed ironing, and came in every color imaginable. But there was a hidden problem. Polyester burns fast and hot. A single spark from a candle, a brush against a space heater, or even a cigarette could turn them into a sheet of fire. Magazines called them the miracle of modern fibers, celebrating their durability and low maintenance, but left out the fact that once they caught fire, they melted onto skin. The chemical smell of burning polyester haunted firefighters and emergency rooms alike. It was fashion and function turned fatal under the glow of a single match. Reports of sudden household blazes started surfacing, each one eerily similar. The wrinkle-free revolution had quietly introduced a new kind of danger. Yet companies rarely mention that part in their glossy catalogs. People wanted convenience, and they got it, along with a risk they never saw coming. Polyester promised glamour but delivered flames. It is chilling to think how many living rooms glowed with more than just style. Nothing said comfort like curling up under an electric blanket on a cold night. They were luxury and warmth rolled into one, a modern marvel for the modern family. But early models had a dangerous flaw: poor wiring. Wires frayed inside the fabric, sparks flew, and fires started in the middle of the night. The cozy hum of electricity felt like progress itself. No more cold sheets or frosty mornings. But inside those blankets, tangled wires rubbed and wore thin with each use, turning comfort into kindling. One overheated coil could transform a peaceful night into a blaze that consumed the very bed it was meant to warm. What was supposed to be comfort became catastrophe. People trusted their blankets to keep them safe and warm, not realizing that one flick of the switch could ignite the bed beneath them. Manufacturers eventually added safety switches and temperature controls, but not before tragedy struck countless homes. The danger of electric blankets was quiet but terrifying. It lived in the very object meant to bring comfort. Even now, some still remember that faint electrical smell, the hum of danger disguised as luxury. If you were a kid in the early 1970s, you probably remember the sound of clackers, the rhythmic click of two acrylic balls smashing together on a string. They were mesmerizing, addictive, and impossible to put down. Every playground echoed with that familiar clack, clack, clack of triumph. But fun quickly turned to fear when kids started showing up with bruises, cuts, and even eye injuries. The acrylic balls could shatter mid-swing, exploding into shards sharp enough to draw blood. Children compared the loudest clack to a badge of honor, competing to see who could swing them the fastest. But the harder they swung, the greater the danger. Tiny shards flew like shrapnel, sometimes slicing faces and arms. Parents called them toys, but in motion, they looked and sounded more like weapons. Parents panicked. Schools banned them. Yet for a brief moment, clackers were everywhere. Symbols of carefree childhood and the chaos of a decade that loved to experiment. Looking back, it is hard not to laugh at how dangerous, harmless fun once was. They were toys that taught a whole generation one unforgettable lesson. Sometimes excitement really can break in your hands. Parents in the 1970s wanted their babies to walk sooner, move faster, and explore the world safely. Baby walkers with metal frames seemed like the perfect invention, a sturdy little chariot for curious toddlers. The commercials showed smiling babies zipping around kitchens, their mothers laughing proudly. But reality was far from safe. The metal frames were heavy, the wheels moved too easily, and one wrong push sent babies tumbling downstairs or into sharp corners. Doctors and safety experts warned of the risks, but television ads kept showing picture-perfect homes where babies moved freely and safely. Behind the marketing glow were countless emergency room visits for skull fractures, broken limbs, and concussions. The wheels that symbolized independence also carried children straight into danger at speeds no one anticipated. Emergency rooms filled with injuries that no one saw coming. Pediatricians begged for the product to be rethought, but the market kept booming. It took years for regulations to catch up, and by then, the damage was done. What was supposed to symbolize independence became a silent threat rolling across living room floors. The sound of those tiny wheels once meant joy, but for many families, it ended in fear. Backyard games were a staple of the 1970s, and lawn darts, known as jarts, were the ultimate crowd pleaser. Big, colorful darts that you tossed toward a plastic ring in the grass. It sounded harmless enough. Families loved them. Picnics, reunions, and barbecues were not complete without a set. But those darts were heavy, sharp, and made of solid metal. A single misthrow could and did cause devastating injuries. Television commercials showed fathers and sons laughing as the darts soared through the air, never showing what happened when they missed. The tips, designed to stick into the ground, were strong enough to pierce skin, bone, even skulls. What began as family fun turned into a national debate over whether danger could ever be part of the game. For years, warnings went ignored. Advertisers showed smiling families, barefoot kids, and perfect summer skies. Behind the fun, hospitals were reporting accidents nationwide. Eventually, the government stepped in, banning them altogether. It is strange how something meant to bring families together ended up tearing so many apart. Today, lawn darts remain a reminder that even the most innocent games can turn deadly when safety takes a back seat. In the 1970s, microwave ovens were the crown jewel of kitchen technology. They cooked faster, looked futuristic, and promised freedom from the oven. Everyone wanted one. But early models came with a terrifying flaw: radiation leakage. The doors did not seal properly, allowing microwave energy to escape into the room. People reported strange sensations, headaches, and even interference with medical devices like pacemakers. Engineers rushed to patch the issue, but many homes kept using their old machines, unaware of the invisible risk humming beside them. What makes it chilling is how normal it all seemed. The soft hum, the warm food, the invisible waves. Microwaves changed the way America cooked, but their early days were filled with more mystery than safety. Progress, as always, came with a price, and this one could not be seen, only felt. In the 1970s, the oven cleaner aisle looked like a science fiction showcase. Every can promised miracle cleaning that could melt away years of grime with a single spray. Housewives were dazzled by the promise of power, of finally taming the dirtiest corner of the kitchen without breaking a sweat. The problem was that power came with a price. Pressurized oven cleaners used caustic chemicals so potent they could burn skin on contact, and their fumes were enough to make people dizzy, or worse. Windows fogged with the stinging smell of ammonia and lye, and eyes watered as families carried on, thinking a little pain meant progress. It was normal to cough your way through a cleaning session. Companies insisted the fumes were safe in well-ventilated areas, as if every suburban home had a laboratory-grade exhaust system. These products made kitchens sparkle, but at the cost of burning lungs and peeling fingertips. Some users fainted, others suffered long-term damage without realizing it until years later. What makes it haunting is how proudly these cans stood under the sink, a modern badge of cleanliness hiding quiet danger. They sold the dream of convenience, and people bought it, never knowing they were trading air for shine. Macrame was everywhere in the 1970s. From wall art to plant holders, it was the ultimate expression of homemade beauty and bohemian life. Then came macrame hanging lamps, the perfect marriage of craft and function. Warm, textured, handmade, they turned living rooms into cozy sanctuaries. But as it turned out, beauty and fire rarely mix well. The woven cords, often made from cotton or jute, dangled dangerously close to incandescent bulbs that burned hot enough to ignite them in seconds. Families admired their glow, unaware that the same lamp could go up in flames at the flick of a switch. Fire departments quietly began issuing warnings, but by then macrame had already woven its way into millions of homes. The ads called them a touch of natural warmth, but that warmth sometimes became all too literal. The danger was poetic in its irony. Something hand-woven with care could end up destroying what it was meant to decorate. Even now, vintage collectors love their retro charm, but they do so with caution, knowing that one of the 1970s most iconic designs doubled as an accidental fire trap. It is the perfect example of a time when style burned brighter than safety. In the 1970s, fiberglass was hailed as the future of fabric, clean, modern, and nearly indestructible. Fiberglass drapes promised homeowners elegance that would never fade, wrinkle, or mildew. They looked soft, light, and airy, glowing in the sunshine like silk spun from clouds. But the moment you touched them, you learned the truth. The threads were made of microscopic glass fibers that broke loose and embedded themselves in skin, itching for days. Worse still, those same fibers floated invisibly through the air, irritating throats and lungs. People vacuumed more, dusted more, never realizing they were spreading the very danger they wanted to remove. Ads bragged that fiberglass curtains were the cleanest fabric ever made, and technically they were. They cleaned you right out of your comfort. Hospitals later traced mysterious rashes and coughing fits back to these drapes. It is astonishing how something designed for beauty and health could become a slow, invisible hazard. They glittered like progress itself, but left a trail of irritation and regret. Fiberglass drapes taught a hard lesson. Sometimes the sleekest innovations scratch the hardest. Few things felt as luxurious in the 1970s as stepping into a bathroom lined with gleaming vinyl. The new plastic revolution promised cleanliness, color, and style, all for a few dollars. Vinyl shower curtains were the perfect finishing touch, offered in endless patterns from florals to flamingos. That distinctive new smell filled the bathroom, proof that you had upgraded to modern living. But that smell was not freshness, it was chemistry. Those fumes came from polyvinyl chloride, or PVC, slowly off-gassing toxins into every breath you took. The air grew thick with invisible chemicals that irritated lungs and caused dizziness, headaches, and nausea. Families thought it was just the humidity. In small bathrooms with poor ventilation, the fumes built up like invisible fog. Scientists later warned that the same compounds could cause long-term harm, but by then, vinyl had taken over the American home. It is unsettling to think that comfort came at the cost of breathing clean air. The 1970s promised a future made of plastic, and it delivered, for better and for worse. Every Saturday morning in the suburbs, the soundtrack was the growl of a gasoline-powered lawnmower. Fathers took pride in the perfectly trimmed lawn, pushing the roaring machine like a badge of responsibility. But those early mowers came without safety guards, and their open blades spun with terrifying speed. A stray pebble could shoot out like a bullet, shattering windows or cutting skin. Fingers, shoes, even loose clothing stood no chance if they got too close. Yet the advertisements boasted about rugged power and effortless cutting. People accepted the danger as part of adulthood, a small risk for suburban perfection. Kids stood nearby, watching their parents mow, sometimes learning the hard way that curiosity and machinery do not mix. By the time safety standards finally arrived, too many accidents had already happened. These mowers were not just tools. They were ticking hazards wrapped in chrome and confidence. The sound of that engine still echoes as a reminder of a time when power mattered more than protection, and a perfectly cut lawn was worth almost any price. No 1970s bathroom was complete without a pop of color, and nothing said modern like an avocado green hairdryer. Sleek, portable, and professional, they made getting ready feel glamorous. Women plugged them in near sinks and bathtubs, never thinking twice about the danger. These dryers had no grounding wires, no circuit protection, and no thermal cutoff to prevent overheating. Drop one in water, and you could be electrocuted in seconds. Leave it running too long, and the motor might catch fire. Yet manufacturers sold them as safe for the whole family. They were often included in matching bathroom sets, part of the design rather than the danger. The hum of those dryers filled countless mornings, a symbol of beauty and self-care. But behind the hum was heat, electricity, and risk. Some families learned the truth only after tragedy. Looking back, it is shocking how close danger sat to the sink each day. The avocado green hairdryer remains one of the decade's prettiest and most perilous accessories. When electric can openers hit kitchens in the 1970s, they felt like magic. No more struggling with sharp manual tools. Just press a button and let the machine do the work. But hidden beneath that convenience was a design nightmare. The exposed metal gears rotated fast, strong enough to slice through aluminum, and anything else that got in the way. Long hair, loose sleeves, necklaces, even curious fingers were no match. One wrong move and a simple dinner prep could turn into a trip to the emergency room. The ads never mentioned that part. They focused on the elegance, the ease, the touch of class. Housewives were encouraged to keep them right on the counter for guests to see. The irony, of course, is that beauty met brutality in a single appliance. The electric can opener was the perfect metaphor for the 1970s kitchen. Sleek, mechanical, and just a little too dangerous. It changed dinner forever, but not without leaving a few scars along the way. The 1970s were the golden age of smoking, and no living room was complete without a table lighter. These were not small, disposable lighters. They were heavy, shiny, and built to impress. Designed to match the decor, they came in shapes of globes, statues, even miniature cars. Guests admired them, often flicking them on just to watch the flame dance. But they were fire waiting for a moment of curiosity. Children loved the bright designs and could easily light them, sometimes with disastrous results. Couch fires, burns, and even house blazes all started with these conversation pieces. Yet advertisements celebrated them as signs of class and sophistication. The line between luxury and danger blurred completely. The problem was not just the flame, it was how normal it seemed to have fire sitting in the center of family life. Smoking table lighters are a perfect snapshot of the 1970s. Bold, beautiful, and oblivious to the risk smoldering right under the surface. Summer in the 1970s meant cookouts, citronella candles, and metal lawn chairs. Light, foldable, and cheap, they were everywhere, from family picnics to backyard barbecues. Their colorful vinyl straps looked cheerful, but after hours in the sun, the metal frames turned scorching hot. Sitting down too quickly meant an instant burn. The straps, too, were unpredictable, aging under heat and sunlight until they snapped mid-sit, sending people crashing to the ground. Yet, despite the bruises and blisters, families kept buying them year after year. The ads sold comfort and style, but they forgot to mention the risk of scorched skin or sudden collapse. Every backyard had a few battle-scarred survivors with melted straps and warped legs, still waiting for one more summer. In a way, those chairs embodied the 1970s spirit. Colorful, disposable, and just a little dangerous. They were symbols of togetherness and simplicity, even as they wobbled beneath the weight of trust. Looking back, it is amazing how something so ordinary could hurt so many and still be remembered fondly. The 1970s turned Christmas into spectacle. No longer content with simple evergreens, families embraced aluminum Christmas trees, metallic, shiny, futuristic. To complete the look, they added electric color wheels that cast rotating lights in every hue. The result was hypnotic. Pink one moment, blue the next, shimmering like tinsel from another world. It felt magical until you realized the tree was made entirely of metal and plugged into a power source. A single short or frayed wire could turn holiday cheer into a disaster. Sparks flew, fuses blew, and some families found themselves putting out more than candles on Christmas Eve. Yet no one wanted to admit the risk. Those trees were status symbols, proof that your home was modern and sophisticated. The glowing colors reflected a time when innovation meant taking chances, even with fire and electricity. Today, they are collector's items, symbols of a decade that thought everything shiny was safe. It is strange to think that one of the brightest icons of the 1970s came with such a dark side, but that perhaps is what made it shine all the more. Dinner in the 1970s was all about presentation. Families gathered around tables dressed in vibrant dishes, bright oranges, deep reds, earthy browns, all colors that screamed modern sophistication. These were the decades of bold patterns and warm tones, and ceramic cookware became the heart of every meal. But those cheerful plates hid a sinister secret. The rich colors were created with lead-based glazes, and with each serving of stew or roast, microscopic traces of that heavy metal seeped into the food. The danger wasn't immediate. It crept in slowly, meal by meal, invisible and tasteless. Housewives scrubbed the dishes clean, never realizing that friction only worsened the leaching. Children grew up with dull headaches, adults complained of fatigue and nausea, and doctors rarely connected it to dinnerware. The irony was bitter. Families had been feeding poison to themselves in the pursuit of style. Manufacturers knew some risk existed but called it negligible, trusting that ignorance would preserve sales. Even imported pottery, celebrated for its artisanal charm, was often glazed with dangerously high lead content. Many homes still have those dishes tucked away in cupboards, a relic from a time when color mattered more than chemistry. Today, collectors love their retro glow, but experts warn never to eat from them again. What once made the table beautiful ended up haunting it for decades. The plates that symbolized togetherness became quiet witnesses to how beauty, in the 1970s, could be deadly in disguise. Mood rings were one of the great novelties of the 1970s, a wearable science experiment that promised to reveal your emotions through color. Everyone from teenagers to suburban moms slipped one on, fascinated by the shifting hues. The idea felt magical. The ring read your body temperature, turning blue for calm, green for balance, black for stress. What the ads never mentioned was that the so-called miracle material inside the glass dome was far from harmless. The liquid crystals that caused the color changes were mixed with trace metals and chemicals that could irritate skin and, in some cases, burn it after prolonged contact. Cheap imports flooded the market, cutting corners with untested materials and leaving users with blistered fingers instead of enlightenment. The metal bands, often made of inexpensive alloys, triggered allergic reactions or left green stains that lingered for days. Parents shrugged it off as part of the fun, unaware of the chemical cocktail pressed against their children's skin. It was a perfect symbol of the decade, half science, half spectacle, and entirely unregulated. For a generation obsessed with self-expression, the mood ring seemed harmless, even profound. Yet behind its charm was a chemical experiment no one should have been wearing. Looking back, it feels less like a peek into one's emotions and more like a reminder that the 1970s loved flirting with danger, even when it fit on a finger. There was a time when cigarettes were as much a part of home decor as the coffee table itself. The 1970s were filled with television ads and glossy magazine spreads showing happy couples laughing in smoke-filled living rooms, perfectly lit with mid-century lamps. Cigarettes weren't just sold as a habit. They were sold as a lifestyle, one of class, comfort, and connection. Homes were designed to accommodate it. Ashtrays sat like centerpieces, sometimes ornate, sometimes shaped like leaves or glass sculptures. Smoke stands gleamed beside armchairs, an open invitation to light up after dinner. The haze of tobacco was as familiar as the hum of conversation. But beneath that glamour lay danger that no one wanted to see. The air thickened with toxins, settling into carpets, drapes, and lungs. Children breathed it nightly as their parents smiled and exhaled under the illusion of sophistication. Companies knew the truth long before the warnings appeared. Internal memos revealed they understood the cancer risk, but masked it behind slogans of freedom and relaxation. Cigarettes became symbols of modern living, tools of escape that quietly destroyed the very health they celebrated. By the time the public caught up, homes were steeped in secondhand smoke, their walls yellowed with residue. It is eerie now to think that families once designed living spaces around a habit that was slowly poisoning them. The cigarette ad era may have burned out, but its smoke still lingers in memory, a reminder of how style and danger once shared the same breath. Every 1970s basement had that same glossy, cozy glow, the rich amber tones of wood paneling reflecting soft lamplight. It felt warm, modern, and safe, a place for games, television, and late-night gatherings. What families didn't realize was that the gleam came from sealants heavy with formaldehyde and volatile chemicals. These coatings, applied to preserve color and shine, slowly released invisible vapors into the air. The smell of new wood that so many found comforting was actually the scent of toxicity. People complained of sore throats, watery eyes, and fatigue, but chalked it up to the weather. Over time, the trapped fumes in poorly ventilated basements built up to alarming levels. Children played in that air. Adults napped on couches beside walls that quietly poisoned them. Manufacturers insisted their products were safe, calling the odors temporary, and even promoting them as proof of quality. Home improvement magazines praised the shine, never mentioning the danger. Years later, environmental health studies traced rising indoor pollution directly to those glossy walls. Many homeowners eventually ripped out their paneling, shocked by the chemicals that had lingered behind it for decades. Yet, despite its risks, the look became iconic. So tied to the decade that nostalgia sometimes makes people forget how hazardous it truly was. That inviting basement glow, once the symbol of American comfort, was really the reflection of fumes that refused to fade. Few images define mid-century America quite like the heavy, rounded refrigerator, gleaming white, humming softly, promising endless cold. By the 1970s, these models had become outdated, replaced by sleeker versions with automatic defrost. But as families upgraded, many of the old fridges ended up in garages, basements, or backyards, waiting for disposal. That is where tragedy often struck. These older models had airtight doors that sealed completely when closed, and no way to open them from the inside. For adventurous children playing hide-and-seek, they looked like the perfect hiding spot. Once the door shut, the heavy latch locked tight, trapping the child in total darkness with no air. Public service campaigns began warning parents to remove the doors before discarding old appliances, but too many ignored them, thinking it could never happen here. The horror stories that followed shook communities, search parties, frantic parents, and the unbearable realization of what those forgotten relics could do. It was not just the danger that was chilling, it was how preventable it was. Laws were eventually passed requiring manufacturers to design magnetic seals instead of mechanical locks, but the damage had already been done. Those old refrigerators, once symbols of prosperity and progress, became silent tombs scattered across suburban America. They stand now as a haunting reminder that even the most ordinary household upgrade can carry a hidden cost when safety comes second to convenience. Letting kids roam the neighborhood alone was not just common in the 1980s, it was encouraged. Children would vanish after breakfast with a bike, a baseball glove, or just their imagination, and no one blinked an eye. They played near rivers, railroad tracks, junkyards, and alleys. They climbed trees and empty lots, chased each other through sprinkler-soaked lawns, and explored storm drains without ever considering the danger. No cell phones, no GPS. Just a promise to be back before dark, maybe. You followed the smell of backyard barbecue or the jingle of the ice cream truck to know where everyone had gathered. The streets raised them. Strangers were just people you had not met yet. The rule was simple. Stay together, watch out for your younger sibling, and come home when the porch lights came on. Parents trusted the neighborhood, and the neighborhood often looked out for them. There was an unspoken safety net woven through the community, invisible but strong. But today, letting a 10-year-old walk to the park alone can spark a visit from child services. Some parents have even faced legal charges for giving their kids the same freedom they once enjoyed. What was once viewed as independence is now labeled negligence. The culture of watchful fear has replaced the freedom of wandering youth. But if that sounds unsettling, it is nothing compared to what used to happen behind the wheel, while kids were in the back seat. Spray-on snow was a holiday must-have in the 1960s, a seasonal delight that turned every window into a frosted wonderland. Just shake the can, press the nozzle, and watch as fluffy white patterns appeared across the glass. It was festive, easy to use, and absolutely everywhere. The catch? That soft, pretty snow was often laced with lead-based pigment. Yep, neurotoxins right in the living room. Kids would draw smiley faces and snowflakes, breathing in fumes and getting it on their fingers before heading back to sip cocoa. Parents sprayed entire windows from top to bottom, unaware that every jolly doodle came with a microscopic health warning. When the holidays were over, wiping it off meant smearing fine white dust all over the furniture, and sometimes even using dry cloths that kicked it up into the air again. It stuck to glass, to hands, and to memories. Photos from the era show smiling kids standing in front of the stuff, glowing with seasonal pride and unknowingly inhaling trace amounts of heavy metals. Eventually, safer versions appeared on the market, but for a while, decorating windows was more toxic than tinsel. And if the snow spray didn't get you, the bed you fell asleep on might, because some kids literally snoozed on pillows filled with flammable fluff. It looked like a cabinet, just a little rectangle in the wall with a tiny knob. But open it up and suddenly you had an ironing board swinging down like a Murphy bed for your clothes. Fold-out ironing boards in the wall were the peak of space-saving genius. These things were especially popular in mid-century homes, when every inch of space had to count. The board folded out flat, usually right next to the laundry area or inside the kitchen pantry. You did not have to drag a heavy metal contraption from the closet. Just pop it open, plug in the iron, and get to work. Some even had a tiny shelf or built-in plug to hold the iron itself, along with a little light above the board. Now that was fancy. Housewives adored these because they made chores quicker. And let's face it, they just looked slick. Like the house was in on the secret with you. Eventually, though, as trends moved toward larger laundry rooms and portable everything, these ironing stations disappeared. But for the folks who grew up with one, there is a real nostalgia there. It was like opening a secret door into domestic life. Now, speaking of secret doors, the next one was not about cleaning your shirt. It was about making sure your closet smelled like the forest. If you were a kid in the 1970s, chugging water straight from the garden hose was basically a rite of passage. You would be out playing tag, riding bikes, or building questionable tree forts and suddenly realize you were dying of thirst. No one ran inside for a water bottle. You went for the hose. You cranked the knob, let the sun-heated water blast out for a few seconds, and then put your mouth right on the nozzle. No one asked where the hose had been or what might be growing inside it. Rubbery taste? Totally normal. Mystery specks? Built character. Parents barely noticed unless you soaked your shirt. Nobody thought twice about what kinds of chemicals were leaching from the plastic or whether small bugs had made it their home. We just drank and kept running. But when it came to food, there were rules. Except during Halloween, when those rules took a break and you took candy from strangers with zero hesitation. Teachers paddling students in school was not a scandal. It was school policy. Across much of the South and Midwest, corporal punishment was written directly into the student handbook. You misbehaved and you got a warning. Do it again, and you were sent to the hallway or the principal's office, where a thick wooden paddle waited behind the door. The ritual was matter of fact. Bending over, hands on your knees, 3 quick swats. Then back to class. It was not seen as abuse. It was called discipline. Parents usually sided with the school. Some even thanked the teacher. You might remember classmates whispering about who got licks that week, or seeing a boy walk back into the room red-faced and silent. Today, physical punishment in schools is banned in a majority of states, with strict protections in place for student rights and well-being. What once passed as character building is now considered physical harm. But in the 1980s, teachers held power that reached beyond textbooks. And if kids were being punished like adults, it is no surprise that they were also being treated like adults in other dangerous ways, like riding up front in moving vehicles without a second thought. Clackers were 2 acrylic or glass balls tied to a string and handed to children with no safety warnings and a full green light. You'd hold the middle of the string, swing the balls upward and downward until they collided above and below your hand, producing that iconic clack-clack sound. It looked simple. It sounded addictive. It was also a hazard waiting to happen. The plastic versions could chip. The glass ones could shatter. And if you missed your rhythm, one ball went rogue, swinging at eyebrow height with all the grace of a wrecking ball. Kids practiced for hours, trying to get the timing right, turning every playground into a percussion concert of Risk. Parents shrugged. Teachers banned them. Hospitals stocked up on ice packs and gauze. But still, they were cool. Until one clack too many ended in sharp pieces flying through the air. Eventually, safety commissions pulled them off shelves. But back then, one broken pair just meant you were in the market for another. And if that seemed dangerous, wait till you hear about people putting flammable foam containers directly onto gas stoves like it was just another Tuesday. Let us talk about the rumpus room. If the living room was where adults behaved themselves, the rumpus room was where the kids got wild. Usually tucked away in the basement, this was the unofficial playground of every suburban household from the 1950s to the 1970s. Carpeted in wall-to-wall shag, lit by lava lamps, and often filled with beanbag chairs, dartboards, and mismatched furniture, the rumpus room was every child's dream and every parent's secret weapon. You could send the kids down there for hours, let them roughhouse, make noise, and burn off all that energy while the grown-ups enjoyed some blessed peace upstairs. It was not about looking nice, it was about cutting loose. Some had jukeboxes, others had board games stacked to the ceiling, and every now and then, you would find a couch that doubled as a trampoline. It was chaos, but it was controlled chaos. Over time, the idea faded as homes got bigger and open concepts took over. Now, everything is multifunctional. But there was something beautiful about a room that existed just for noise, mess, and memory-making. The name says it all, rumpus. No rules, just vibes. But even in the loudest house, you still needed a way to call the kids upstairs. And you will not believe how we used to do that. Max Headroom was supposed to be the future, a computer-generated, sarcastic television host who stuttered stylishly and wore sunglasses at night. He was the face of a dystopian digital world, equal parts cyberpunk icon and artificial intelligence with an attitude. Advertisers loved him, especially soda companies. So someone had the bright idea, let us give him a full television series. What could possibly go wrong? Everything. The Max Headroom show was visually interesting but narratively confusing. It tried to blend science fiction with satire, wrapped in glitchy editing and background noise. Most of the time, you were not sure if the show was broken or just being artsy. The plotline featured underground hackers, corrupt corporations, and a bleak media landscape, which ironically kind of predicted the internet. And Max, once a futuristic face of advertising, became more of a trivia answer at bar night. Still, his influence stuck around in weird ways. You can spot traces of Max Headroom in everything from video game villains to pop music videos. And if you thought that was sensory overload, wait until we talk about the time theaters tried to make movies smell like real life. Ah yes, Sinclair's home chemistry lab sets. Nothing says wholesome childhood fun like handing 10-year-olds real acids, flammable powders, and the ability to create small explosions in the garage. In the early 1960s, these kits were everywhere. Marketed as educational, they were part science, part spectacle. Kids could grow crystals, mix glowing liquids, and experiment with reactions that would make any science teacher twitch. But the truth? These kits were a ticking time bomb. Figuratively and sometimes literally. They included potassium nitrate, sulfur, and other compounds that today would be locked in a school lab under triple-sealed storage. There were instructions for creating mini smoke bombs, acids that could burn through metal, and even chemical reactions that, if mixed incorrectly, could send a glass beaker flying across the room. Lawsuits started piling in. So did safety warnings. By the end of the decade, the most dangerous sets were pulled from shelves, and future versions were watered down to the point of being glorified food coloring. Still, for a brief window of time, American kids had access to a fully stocked chemical arsenal. But if you think a little sulfur was intense, you should smell what came next. And no, it wasn't roses. Hitchhiking was once seen as adventurous, not reckless. People stuck out their thumbs with a smile and a sign, hoping for a ride and maybe a story. Soldiers on leave, college students on break, wanderers with a dream. They all relied on the kindness of strangers. Roads were filled with possibilities, and nobody thought twice about pulling over. You might remember watching someone hop into a stranger's car and wave goodbye, trusting the road and the driver. It was how many got from one town to the next, especially before cheap bus fares and ride-sharing apps. Parents might warn you to be careful, but that was the extent of the worry. Hitchhiking was not illegal in most places. It was resourceful. Over time, though, stories of assaults, disappearances, and crimes changed the narrative. Laws tightened. Signs went up, "No hitchhiking." Now, in many states, it is restricted or outright banned. The open road closed itself off. Hitchhiking became a symbol of risk rather than freedom. But for those who once stuck out their thumb and caught a ride with a stranger, it still lives in memory as a gesture of trust. And just as strangers were trusted, so were quiet children waiting patiently in cars, alone. Mercurochrome was the go-to cure-all for scraped knees, elbow bumps, and mystery cuts. Parents swore by it. Kids feared it. That bright reddish-orange liquid came in a glass bottle with a glass applicator wand, and just one dab left a dramatic stain that lasted for days. But here's the kicker. It contained mercury. Yes, mercury, the same heavy metal now known for its toxic effects. Back then, no one seemed too worried. You'd cry over the sting, get that radioactive-looking splotch on your skin, and be sent back outside with a pat on the head. It looked serious. It felt serious. It was practically a badge of honor. But despite the visual drama, the medical risk was invisible and long-lasting. Mercurochrome was banned in several countries over mercury concerns, yet the smell alone could transport you back to childhood panic and Band-Aid negotiations. But if your parents weren't coating your wounds with mercury, they might have been setting you up with something even more explosive, like a fun chemistry set packed with open flames and no supervision. Speaking of things built right into the house, you are not going to believe what kind of doors were hiding inside the walls. For your milk. Picture this. You wake up, walk to the side of your kitchen, and open a tiny little door built right into your house. Behind it, a bottle of fresh milk, cool and ready to pour, maybe even some butter or cream depending on the day. No, it is not magic. That was the milk door, also called a milk chute. These small pass-through compartments were genius in their simplicity. One side opened from the outside, where the milkman would quietly place the day's delivery. The other opened from inside the house, so you never had to go out in your slippers or bathrobe. It was the drive-through window before there were drive-throughs. These doors were more than convenient. They were a sign that the world once ran on a shared rhythm. Everyone knew when the milkman came by. You could even leave payments or notes inside. Some had little shelves, others had insulation. And most people never locked them, because who would steal milk? Of course, once grocery stores and home refrigeration became widespread, the milk door quietly disappeared, sealed up, painted over, or just forgotten. But somewhere out there, behind layers of drywall, a few still exist. Hidden time capsules. It looked like something straight out of a haunted dollhouse and somehow got greenlit as a beauty product. The Rejuvenique face mask promised younger, firmer skin through electrical muscle stimulation, which is a fancy way of saying it zapped your face with little shocks. Advertised by a former soap opera star, the mask wrapped around your head like a plastic exoskeleton and turned your facial routine into something that felt like a scene from a horror film. The idea was that the stimulation would tone your face like a gym tones your body, but customers mostly reported mild burns, numbness, and the distinct feeling that they had made a terrible mistake. Despite airing on television with the enthusiasm of a late-night miracle cure, it flopped hard. It was the kind of product that felt less like a beauty tool and more like a sci-fi movie prop that somehow escaped the set. Still, you had to admire the ambition. If you could survive the Rejuvenique, surely you could survive anything the 1980s had to throw at you. And as it turns out, that next throw was straight at the kids, because someone thought gym fashion should start in elementary school. Riding in the open beds of pickup trucks was more than just normal in the 1980s. It was a childhood rite of passage. You can still remember the feeling of the wind slapping your cheeks as the truck bounced down dusty back roads or sped along highways, your legs braced and your hands gripping the cool metal rails. There was no seatbelt, no cushion, just you, the sky, and maybe a sibling or two clinging beside you, giggling or yelling at passing cars. Parents did not think twice. It was just how things were done. Tailgates were for hauling lumber and hauling children. But today, in most states, it is illegal to ride in the bed of a pickup truck unless you are a farm worker or under specific exceptions. Authorities now call it dangerous, irresponsible, unthinkable. But for those who grew up in the 80s, it was freedom on four wheels. If bouncing around in the back of a pickup sounds wild by today's standards, wait until you remember what kids were doing completely unsupervised just a few blocks from home. Polystyrene cup noodle warmers were the product of instant gratification and zero caution. Before microwave noodles were common, people would boil water and pour it straight into a foam cup filled with dehydrated soup. But for the especially impatient or inventive, the next step was balancing that foam cup directly onto a gas burner to keep it hot. Polystyrene, in case you're wondering, is highly flammable, as in melts, warps, and ignites at low heat, kind of flammable. So what happened? The bottom would bubble, the sides would sag, and occasionally the whole thing would catch fire, turning dinner into a miniature inferno. The smell of scorched styrofoam was unforgettable and extremely unhealthy, but people kept doing it. Kids copied their parents, placing their cup of noodles just a little too close to the open flame and watching in awe as the foam darkened and shrank. Eventually, warnings were printed, packaging changed, and microwaves saved us from ourselves. But for one hot moment, dinner meant dodging a kitchen fire. And if that was not festive enough, holiday decorating added its own flair, with a snow spray that came with a cloud of toxic cheer. Walk into an old house and open a closet door, and you might get hit with a smell that is oddly comforting, woody, warm, a little spicy. That would be cedar. Not a scent diffuser, not a spray. Actual cedar wood, lined across the walls of the closet from top to bottom. These cedar-lined closets were the silent guardians of America's wardrobes. They protected against moths, mildew, and musty smells. But they also added a kind of rustic luxury, like storing your clothes inside a tree trunk at a high-end cabin. The idea was simple. Cedar wood naturally repels insects, so why not turn your entire closet into a bug-proof haven? People did not just store coats in there, they kept heirlooms, wool suits, and seasonal clothes safe year-round. Some closets were fully lined, others just had a single cedar panel on one wall. Either way, it gave the whole room a spa vibe long before that was a thing. These days, you might see cedar blocks or hangers sold in stores, but entire closets made of the stuff? That has faded into the woodwork, literally. The world got synthetic, and the cedar charm became a relic. But if you think that was clever, wait until you see how people used to pass food across rooms without ever leaving their chair. Muscle pants for kids, that was the pitch. Somewhere, a grown-up looked at a child and said, "You know what this kid needs? Pants that scream steroid energy." These were Zubaz-style leggings with wild patterns and stretch material designed to mimic the bodybuilding look of adult gym rats. Except they were made for children. The problem was not just the patterns, which, by the way, included everything from neon zebra stripes to camouflage lightning bolts. It was that kids had no idea how to wear them. The pants were often too tight or too loose, and they came with this weird fake athletic vibe that clashed hard with the Sesame Street lunchboxes. These pants were a hard no. Schools started quietly banning them for being distracting, and parents got tired of explaining to teachers that no, their child was not training for a junior weightlifting championship. They were just victims of 1980s fashion. The trend came and went faster than you could say bicep curl. But speaking of trying too hard to look futuristic, let us talk about the time Atari thought your forehead could play video games. Buying cold medicine used to be as easy as grabbing a candy bar. In the 1980s, if you had a stuffy nose, you walked into the drugstore, picked up a box of Sudafed, paid in cash, and left. No questions asked, no identification, no tracking. Parents sent their kids to buy it. It was just medicine, part of every household. But the main ingredient in many of those over-the-counter remedies, pseudoephedrine, was later linked to illegal methamphetamine production. By the early 2000s, laws changed. Now, you need to show identification, sign a logbook, and face strict limits on how much you can buy. The shelves are locked. The trust is gone. And what used to be a quick stop for relief has turned into a regulated transaction. But before children were regulated at pharmacies, they were doing something else just as shocking in the family car, standing tall while it moved. Home hair dryers in the 1960s looked like they came straight from a beauty salon, but without any of the safety checks. These early models had bulky hoods or handheld nozzles, often with thick cords that frayed faster than a worn shoelace. You'd plug them into the wall, perch near the bathroom sink, and hope for the best. No ground wires, no insulation. Just you, your wet hair, and a live current a sneeze away from disaster. The metal casing got hot. The motors sparked occasionally. And heaven help you if your fingers were damp. Water plus faulty wiring? That hairdo could turn into a fireworks show. Yet people trusted them because that sleek salon look felt worth the risk. Back then, it was just another day in the name of glamour. But if electricity was playing with fire, what we put directly on wounds wasn't much better, especially when it came in a bright red bottle with a mercury surprise. Back in the days when phones had cords and privacy was a privilege, every hallway had a throne, and it was called the gossip bench. This was not just a chair. It was a hybrid masterpiece, a small wooden seat attached to a side table, designed specifically for long, dramatic phone calls. These benches were often placed right by the hallway phone nook, and if you were a teenager in the 1960s or 1970s, this was your favorite spot in the house. You would sit there for hours, twirling the phone cord, whispering about crushes, repeating, "No, you hang up," while your siblings paced in the background waiting for their turn. Some benches had a little drawer for pens and paper. Others had cushions and floral fabric, showing just how serious folks were about comfort during those marathon chats. It was furniture that served one purpose: conversation. But as phones got smaller, and then wireless, and then fit in your pocket, the gossip bench faded away. Today, they are vintage novelties. Back then, they were the nerve center of the household. And while you chatted away about school dances or new neighbors, something else might have been happening overhead. Quietly, from the ceiling, playing your favorite song. Imagine this. It is Sunday morning. You are eating breakfast, and faintly from above your head comes the sweet hum of big band music or the evening news. Electric slimming belts were the miracle fitness gadget of the 1980s, or so the ads claimed. Wrap it around your waist, plug it in, flip the switch, and prepare to get electrocuted into peak physical form. These belts sent pulsing electric shocks into your abdomen under the promise of stimulating muscles and burning fat. What they really did? Cause skin burns, fainting spells, and enough emergency room visits to make the Food and Drug Administration step in. They buzzed, jolted, and sometimes sparked, especially if you were sweaty, which the instruction manual encouraged. You'd lie there, twitching like a frog in biology class, convinced the pain meant it was working. These devices became so notorious that many were banned or pulled from shelves by the late 1980s. Today's fitness tech might still overpromise, but at least it doesn't literally jolt you awake. Unless you miss the 1980s, in which case, wait until you see what they handed to kids in the toy aisle next. A survival knife inspired by Rambo. Because what could go wrong? Driving after a few beers was seen as a minor risk, not a moral failing. In the 1980s, drinking and driving was common. So common, it barely raised an eyebrow. Someone would leave a barbecue or a bowling alley, buzzed but smiling, and climb behind the wheel like it was just another Tuesday night. Sometimes they even brought a drink with them for the road, nestled between their legs or sitting in the cup holder before cup holders even existed. You might remember the clink of bottles under the seat or the faint scent of beer still on your uncle's breath as he drove you home. Nobody called it reckless. Nobody flinched. It was treated the same way as driving tired or driving in the rain. Risky, sure, but manageable if you knew what you were doing. Breathalyzers were rare. Police might give a warning, not a ticket. Getting pulled over meant a brief conversation, not a night in jail. Today, of course, the laws have changed, and for good reason. Drunk driving kills thousands. Campaigns like Mothers Against Drunk Driving helped turn the tide, showing the public what casual drinking behind the wheel really cost. But back then, it was not about recklessness. It was about a culture that had not yet connected its habits with their consequences. And if the idea of casual drinking while driving sounds dangerous now, just imagine what the air was like inside your favorite restaurant. If these forgotten dangers made you gasp, cringe, or remember a time when home safety was more hope than science, tell us which one shocked you most in the comments. Tap that like button for more vintage deep dives and subscribe so you never miss the next hidden hazard of history.